Hello and welcome back to the Fairbanks Year-Round Podcast. Today I am joined with Keith Bartusch with sani-can, which is a very exciting topic for me, and I'm not saying that sarcastically. I've been looking forward to this one for sure, so thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Blake, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yep. So he came super short notice. We were just talking about this, so this is great to have you out here. We always start with basically how did you come to the area? What's your history with Fairbanks?
Yeah. So, I think I came up here in 97. I was playing junior hockey for a different hockey team, played against the Ice Dogs. So I came up here in like December. It was 40 below. Northern Lights were out.
Where were you from?
I was from Graham, Washington originally, but the junior hockey team I was playing was like in South LA, like Ventura County area. Mm-hmm. I came up here. We stayed at the Golden Nugget Inn, which is, I think now, I think they've demolished it since. Yeah. But it was a cool experience. Came up and played at the Big Dipper for the first time and as an opposing goaltender with my team, and loved the crowd and loved the atmosphere at the Dipper. So I in that off season, I reached out to Rob Profit, who was the head coach and GM of the time, and just asked him if he'd be interested in bringing me in, and said fly on in. And so I think it was like August 98. I came up here, and pretty much once I was here and went to high school here, it was about the same vibe as my hometown in Graham, Washington. Kind of more country, more kind of laid back, slower pace, especially in LA. I mean, that was a hard year for me. So.
Oh yeah, so you were in LA for a little bit?
Yeah. So after LA to Fairbanks, I was like, you know what, these are my people. And, so I played 2 years at the Ice Dogs, and then went home for a short stint and worked construction and went to community college. And I was actually heading to Wazoo, but then UAF called and asked if I wanted to be the third string goalie up at the university. So I dropped everything I was going to do, and I was like, yep, let's head back to Fairbanks. And met my wife in college, so she's from Fairbanks. She's like a fourth generation Alaskan. Met her in college, and we, I think by my senior year we were engaged, and it was kind of like around that time where I was deciding, hey, do I want to keep playing hockey? Do I want to go travel? Do all that kind of stuff, or do I want to just sort of settle down? And it was always the post game press conferences after the game when you just see the crowd of people. I don't know if it's the same like that anymore at UAF, but back then, I mean, it was packed. It was a packed post-game press conference. There was news media there. This is like 2003, 2004, kind of that era. And just looking out in the crowd, and I'm not just saying this. I think even at that time on the podium, I said, "Hey, Fairbanks is where I want to live, raise my family." So that's kind of how I came to Fairbanks, and obviously going to always be a Fairbanks resident.
So and this is always kind of a hard question. How did the hockey career kind of end for you?
It ended when a young freshman, Wiley Rogers, came in and just absolutely played out of his mind. So it was kind of good writing on the wall. He took over the starting role my senior year, and I was like, okay, this is I had aspirations of playing at a high level of hockey, and I did, I think Division I hockey is pretty good. But it was sort of that, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to like live in a suitcase and travel around and, get traded team to team and just sort of make a minor hockey, career out of it? Or do I want to, marry my wife? And she was getting her master's at the time up at the university. At the same time, my senior year, he was my future boss, but at the time he was, a hockey fan, and he reached out to me, and he was the commercial loan manager at Denali State Bank. And so I still had like a whole nother semester to go, but he had asked, hey, would you be interested in banking? Of course, all I knew was hockey and schoolwork. And so I was like, yeah, sure. And so I had to go Google what a commercial loan officer was. And I think I saw what the salaries were and this and that and what was in my checking account at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'll be a banker. So I graduated at university in 2005 and went right to Denali State Bank and became a commercial lender. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Are you still doing that now? Or
no?
Okay, good. I was like, I should know this.
Yeah.
As a real estate agent.
Right. So I was a banker for 16 years. I was a commercial lender at Denali State Bank, and then at First National, and then I went back to Denali for about 2 years. Yeah. During that shift, from First National Bank back to Denali is when the sani-can deal kind of arose and was an opportunity for me to look into. So I sort of, I wouldn't have ever gone back to Denali if that deal, was starting when I was at First National. Yeah. So it was kind of one of those weird things where it literally happened right when I went to Denali. So, I owned the company for about a year while I was a banker. mixed reviews on that. Like, I really do think as a business owner, you should be in your business, and even if you've got management that run it for you and stuff. But we had a couple good years at the start with the company at sani-can, and I was kind of sitting there at my desk at Denali, and I was like, I don't know if I should just be sitting here doing what I'm doing here while I've got a company that's having some success. So I let my boss know at the time, like, hey, I'm gonna probably call it quits here. Gave him adequate time, of course, but
right.
Yeah. So no, I'm quasi retired as a banker. So
yeah. It sounds like from someone looking on the outside, it seems like you went backwards, because most people would go from sucking poop to maybe like a banking job and then become the hockey star. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
But
right.
So I wanted to go back between the transition between hockey and becoming a banker there. Was that mentally, and do you know Ken Bouthillier?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's, I've been talking to him about this as well.
Yep.
Was that mentally like a really hard shift to be like, hey, this is, I assume, something that was consuming your life for a large portion of your life, to being, again, I'm trying to say this like harshly, like maybe this is just not for me, or I'm not where I need to be like skill wise, or whatever the reasoning was in your head. And it sounds like settling down was also a huge part. Was that like a hard transition, or did it feel like very natural? Like, hey, this is kind of the end of this era for me.
Good question. Going into the workforce, especially in banking and kind of being in a team setting, that part was easy, just because I've always been in a team setting with hockey, and every, just like on a hockey team, every player has an integral part, for the team success. And same with, being one lender at the bank, you've got to contribute, right, to make your company successful. So that part was easy. I mean, that's, instead of putting on a jersey, you're putting on a tie, it's the same thing. Going to my first Nanook game not playing was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh yeah.
Sitting there, as a senior, you played with the juniors, the sophomores, and the freshmen, and then you're done. You're just done. And so you show up, they zap your ticket, you go sit in a seat, and you're watching like your best friends, your brothers out on the ice. And that was pretty hard. So, but I think about 6-7 games into the season, you kind of get used to it and realize, hey, this is, when I was a freshman in college, all the seniors would say, hey, enjoy this, because it's going to go quick. And you're like, oh my God, this is going to go quick. This is horrible. Like classes, training, all that stuff. And it flies by. I mean, it's insane how fast it goes. So, transitioning into corporate America was pretty easy in that regard. I think the hardest thing at the bank was, in hockey, if some defensemen or forwards or goaltenders aren't doing their job, you can kind of get in their face and be like, step it up. In corporate America, you can't. You
just throw the mitts off.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, and I learned that quick. There was an experience at the bank once where I was pretty upset, and in hockey, if you're upset, you just get to drop them and go. And I quickly was called into my boss's office, and they said, hey, you can't do that here.
Yeah.
So that was a lesson learned, and I think even at the time I was probably 25, 24, 20, somewhere in there. I think I was still baffled. Like, what? You can't?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get that person to start, getting into shape and doing their job? And they're like, you just can't do that. So
yeah, I think it's from my side. I never played hockey, never in a very physical sport or anything like that, growing up at least. And then that seems really obvious to me. Obviously, you're not going to shout at your coworkers and stuff in general. But like, again, when it's all you've been doing, it's like, hey, this is how we, and later you guys are still friends and it's not a big deal or whatever. Right. And then, Kathy at the front desk is like, he yelled at me.
No, but, he's hostile.
He's hostile. Something wrong with this guy.
Yeah.
So between and we're going to dig in deeper on these, but it's kind of a cool perspective you have between the hockey, like a sports career, being in banking and being a business owner. So being an employee there. What would you consider to be like the most difficult? I mean, physically, stress levels, however you want to put that. Obviously, I feel like hockey's got to be the physically most difficult.
Man, I don't think you named it, being a dad, as you know, and congratulations, by the way.
Thanks,
is that your first that you had, or
fourth girls?
So you certainly four girls. So I got 3 boys.
Oh yeah, you gonna keep trying for a girl?
No, we're done. But yeah, honestly, I don't want to say any of it's easy. Hockey certainly wasn't easy. Showing up 9 to 5 and asking people, to be able to lend them money. That's not easy either. And And of course, sani-can, we've got our quirks too within our company. I mean, it's, everybody's an individual, and, it's that same team setting where you just got to try to get everybody on the same page and move in the same way for the success of the company. So yeah, I would say being a dad is the toughest, We're getting in the teenage years now with the 3 boys.
I was going to ask.
My youngest just turned 11 today, and my oldest is turning 15 next month. So it's, and my middle one's 13 here in October. So we're kind of in that stage now. We got through all the diaper phases, and kids can get their shoes on their own and buckle up, and now we're in the reality of electronics and social media and just those teenage years. And
that's tough.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a grind.
So my oldest is 10, and often I feel like she's a lot older. I don't know the deals with that, but I've often thought about it, and we're like, it's going to be what it's going to be when we get to that point. But we have these plans of especially like social media and all that is just like really scary.
Super scary.
Yeah. Cause, and I'm younger than you. But still, like, we were getting, when I was a freshman is when the first iPhone came out.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking very distinctly, that's not going to stick. Like, you don't even have a physical keyboard on there. It's like, who is going to use that? So don't come to me for stock picking advice, because I'll be very bad at it. But all through my high school, I did have a cell phone that texted. And then I think maybe like my senior year, I had a smartphone or something, but it wasn't the same. Like, I don't think people understand, like, there wasn't the Instagram models and the TikTok things that are going on and all this crazy stuff that's come up now. So yeah, the thought of that, like knowing how, looking back at myself and how impressionable I was, it's like, I don't know, man. So how are you dealing with all that? Is it like kind of like no phones, or do you restrict the internet, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, we have our rules, a friend of mine, AT&T, she kind of helped me out, showing me, how to set up the family settings, and, I can put time limits on apps, and, when the phone's shut down, and, we have a family rule, like at 9:00, phones are up in our room and away from kids, and they got to start doing their actual reading and bedtime routine. But, yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, I think I had MySpace in college, and that's, and Zeb, obviously, Zeb just a couple days ago sent me a text, with a video, and it was like an old, like, he played for the Ice Dogs as well.
Right.
And, it was a video of him and getting interviewed, and then Prof getting interviewed, and, and he made a comment about how young Prof looks, and we were laughing back and forth. And I said, well, how'd you get that video? Do you have a VCR? And he goes, no, I had a friend burn it on a CD. And I started laughing, cause I'm like, a CD? I don't even have a DVD player anymore. I think it's just, my wife's a counselor. She's an elementary school counselor here in town. And, she takes the bulk of that side of things with the boys when it comes to social media and obviously, their appearance and how they conduct themselves and in school and in life. And I just get to yell at them, but
that old hockey,
that old hockey, nobody can tell me I can't yell at my kids. So, but
they play hockey, by the way.
They do. All three of them. Yeah, they all play hockey. So they play hockey and soccer and backyard wiffle ball and stuff like that. But they're pretty active kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think, just explaining to them, about the whole, like, hey, you're snapping a picture and that goes out online. I mean, that thing's gone forever, and you can't take it back, and you got to be careful what you say, especially now, right? In 2024, it's like, you don't write what you actually want to, your real opinion online.
Even this podcast, my wife, so you guys can't see, but she used to sit off screen there since the baby. She's not got time for that.
Yeah.
But I would see her out of the corner of my eye, just like shaking her head after I said something stupid. And she'd be later, she's like, you should edit that out. I was like, nah, I'm not editing. It's just going out. She's like, it's going to be out there forever. I was like, that's fine. Yeah. I say a lot of stupid things, you can't keep it all in, but
yeah, we all do, so it's, but it's pretty crazy what's going on now. I mean, especially when people are pulling back texts from, when mostly athletes, cause that's kind of who I follow on like a Twitter base, but I mean, they could post something when they were 16 years old and, now they're 28 and they sign a big deal and the media just goes after them about something they did when they were 17. And you're just like, wow, like and that scares me as a dad with 3 boys. And
I feel like there's been a bit of a pullback or just maybe a fatigue from people, like the whole, cancel culture and all that, where it's a lot of times now it's like, is what they did really that bad? And you think back at your own life, you're like, I'm glad that wasn't on video or something, something
exactly.
you did. So I think there is some bounce back from that.
Totally. Yeah. And, is it bad now? Absolutely. It's bad now. But, when nobody knew any better back then, if that was bad or not, like, I don't think they should be punished for that. But, you're right. You're starting to see rollback and push back on it where it's like, hey guys, let's be a little less sensitive and just understand, like, hey, We're all people. So
yeah, I think it's understanding the times as well, which and things are moving so quickly, just with everything, not to get too political here, but let's say when they were tearing down statues of everybody, it's like, if you go back in history, pretty much everybody is kind of a terrible person. If you look at everything they do in their life, it's like, but it was like really hard times, like the past, we'll say 100 years. Pretty freaking easy. We're not like, at least in America, we're not really worrying about starving for food and stuff for the most part. I know there's some people out there that are struggling, but you look at like whatever, 200 years ago and everybody was hungry. Even my grandpa, he's always a little short. He's maybe 5'7" or so. And I'm 6'2", and he's like, I'd have been as tall as you if I'd had enough to eat, He's like, I was always hungry. His one memory, he says, the only time I remember as a child being full is his uncle had a cornfield. And they had to go help him, collect it and shuck it and all that. And the payment was eating as much corn as you wanted. He's like, the only time I ever being full. I'd be eating so much corn, man. It was unbelievable. So anyways, we kind of got off track there. So back on to just the trajectory there to sani-can. So you were doing both for, you said, a year or two.
Yep.
And then you decided to take that leap. Well, how did sani-can come about? And I should know the answer to this. Is this like a nationwide franchise, or is it just okay?
No, it's a local company.
Should be. Sani-can's a good name.
Yeah, no, it's a great name. It's a great company. So I was the banker to sani-can for about 13 years. So previous owner, her name was Ronnie Ashback. She wanted to retire essentially, and she had bought a coffee farm in Hawaii. So she wanted, she was in her, I can't remember, early 60s, mid 60s, somewhere in that era, and she was essentially going to have her children run it, and unbeknownst to that, they just didn't happen. So she came to my office, and we were kind of looking at, okay, how do we get this thing prepared to sell, right? And so as we were discussing that throughout a couple meetings, she basically looked at me and she was like, "Why don't you buy it?" And to be honest, Blake, I was pretty distraught in banking for my own personal reasons. It was just kind of like. And banking is a great career. And it really is. And it was kind of like, for me, I was kind of going through a different time in my life where I was kind of like, I don't want to say I was fake by any means, but let's say I was like, you couldn't show your real emotions, right? Like as in sales, like you could be grumpy, or that client that you're working with can just be a real pain, right? Like they're just like making you go search 15 different houses, and all of a sudden they got a different need or a want. And you're like, well, why didn't you say that in the first place? And but you got to smile and you got to do the best job possible for them. And it's kind of like a thankless job where like you jump through so many hoops, and you cut so many deals left and right, and you're at the closing table, and and people are signing documents. And, they're bitching about, the interest rate, even though they agreed to it. We printed out the docs, things like that, or the loan fee, or how the loan was structured. And I'm like, man, this was the only way I can make this work. And you wanted it, so it was kind of one of those things where you just do that so many different times. You're just kind of like, or like 10 o'clock at night, you're getting a text and it's, hey man, I need 200,000 tomorrow. And you're like, oh shit. Okay. I'm going to need XYZ in paperwork. What? You still need that? Yeah, man. Like we have regulators, like I can't just, it's not my money. It's the bank's money. Yeah. It's the board of directors' money, so there was that kind of just wear and tears on you for me anyways. I'm
going to cut in just momentarily because I know you were kind of comparing us. I will say lenders have it way worse than agents on far as like when things go wrong, like I'm saying this facetiously. It's the lender's fault. Like
100%.
Like 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh my God, the lender made this thing fall apart. And in reality, you could be traced back to the lender, but it's generally the regulations and the governing bodies that are like influencing very, very heavily, by the way. Totally. The lending and banking practices are very touched by regulations.
I know.
So yeah, it's one of those things, but yeah, I mean, a lot of deals, and I don't do a ton of commercial, but I'm sure it's very similar, if not more complicated than the residential side, where something falls apart and they hate the lender, It's,
totally.
Yeah.
I will say commercial lending is easier than mortgage.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's still regulations, but it's more internal versus just sort of the regulations and the documentation that you have to have for a mortgage. Because I think, obviously that bank's kind of the middleman, right, on mortgage, and then they turn around and they sell that loan off. On the commercial side, we're holding that loan, so we have more internal settings that we have to look into. It's in-house money. But yeah, it's just I would say it's a smidge easier just because of the actual like less regulations like on a commercial building that you'd have to look into then versus a house, with the inspectors and everybody else that comes through. But yeah, the regulations just bog everything down. And I remember, I think it was Obama was on the podium like in 2009 after kind of the national market crash. And he was like, these banks need to lend out money.
Yeah.
And we're like, man, we have tons of money. We'd love to lend it out. Like we can't, like you're not letting us because of all the XYZ factors that these people have. And so it's kind of like, wow, this is a weird time. Like we're sitting on money. Trust me, if it was my own money and, I had enough to survive and raise I'd be lending it out left and right. It's, I love helping out people. I mean, that was the plus of the commercial lending job was, the customers that really did appreciate what you did. Unfortunately, I feel like it was just getting, farther, less and less, but,
right.
And maybe it was me, I don't know. Just, their sheer enjoyment and seeing them get to grow their company and do what they want. And, and a lot of just those dealings over the 15, 16 years is what led me to be like, hey, you know what? I'd always wanted to own a company. I'd always wanted to run a business. The only thing I knew was golf clubs and hockey equipment. So I was kind of, I was always throwing out funny, crazy ideas and seeing what stuck. So, always knew that sani-can was a very good company, especially on paper and as the banker. So when that actually did happen, and she had mentioned, why don't you buy it? I went home and I told my wife, and she knew I was distraught with banking at the time and wanted out at some point. And she was like, well, this is better than all the stupid ideas that you've come up with. And I've nicknamed her the dream killer, but realistically, she's kept me grounded. But
that's my wife. She's gonna hate to hear this. Dream killer's harsh, sweetie. Sorry,
dream killer. Yeah,
but no, it's like, hey, here's reality. Like, don't forget about that.
Exactly.
As you're floating away with your
without her, I probably would have started 13 stupid companies that just failed miserably. But,
you need that balance for sure.
When she was like, her mouth open and she was like, oh my God, like, are you gonna do it? And I was like, I think so. And she was excited.
Good.
So it was a pretty cool situation. And she'd known because I'd come home and be like, oh, this company's really good. And I became friends with Ronnie over the years and, the previous owner, and we'd go have lunches and I'd check in and she'd always give me updates on the company and the employees and, bounce ideas. I think she was really good at utilizing a lot of folks in town to kind of help run her company. Not that we would be like boots on the ground with her company, but she just always listened to advice and sometimes take it, sometimes not. So that was a really good attribute of Ronnie, because I know she worked with some others in town and would always get their advice as well. So,
on the, we'll say the finance side of owning a business, do you feel like being a commercial lender was like super helpful in that, or was it like, okay.
Yeah, I do. As a commercial lender, we're looking at the P&Ls and we're looking at the balance sheets and we're looking at tax returns and we're spreading everything, right? Like we're plugging in all the numbers in our software and we're spreading it. And then essentially what we're doing is we're telling a story from past year's numbers to current numbers to future numbers, essentially to our board or anybody that has to sign off on.
So you're like pitching this.
We're pitching it, and letting the board know like, hey, here's where our risk is. Here's where we can excel. Here's where this company is going to excel. Here's where they could have some downfalls. So for 15 years doing that and then jumping into a company and understanding the books and understanding like, okay, here's a profit and loss statement and here's a balance sheet. And a lot of people think they're just two separate documents. They intertwine, and they tell a story. And so, being able to do that and understanding cash flow, right? Like cash flow in banking, we have always had a term, cash flow is king. And try to argue it. Cash flow is king. And that's essentially how I run the company, is based off cash flow, Am I a budget guy? Yes and no. sani-can's a tough, company to budget for, just because, you don't know when equipment's going to break. You don't know, when we need to make a massive purchase, whether it's a truck or more restrooms. So it's just basically basing it off of cash flow. And then, I think I kind of revert back to my hockey background is, we're running a team. I've coached for 20 years now in hockey. And I kind of say I run it like a hockey team. Like I'm the head coach, and I kind of see with what departments are doing what and how they're intertwining. There was probably my favorite class at UAF when I was there. And unfortunately that professor, who was my absolute favorite, she had passed on. She passed away, I think in like 2011 or 12. Her name was Susan Herman. She was awesome, real strict. I think every student was always scared to go in there, but she loved hard workers. So if you just worked hard and you just showed her that you actually cared, she would, she loved you. So she ran a class called Organizational Theory and Behavior. And that really like kind of opened my eyes to, all the, no offense to UAF, but all the dumb like fluff classes that you have to take and all the stupid, half the time, you take a econ class and you didn't even know what you were doing. You were just kind of plugging in formulas or, things of that nature. But organizational theory and behavior was really, what really stuck to me was like workplace dysfunction. I guess you just never knew, like you always thought, okay, well, here's this business owner in this company and it looks like it's a really good company, right? But you don't know the internals of it. And, it's amazing how like, you could have I don't want to say low level employee just cause that sounds mean, but like you could have a yard guy or girl, at your company. Well, if they're upset about something and, their job, like within our company is to clean restrooms that are coming back and they're upset and they don't do a good job. Well, then they put the restrooms back on the pad and the driver comes in and picks up a restroom and they go to deliver it. And it's not what it should have been. Now that driver's upset, so it's like one dysfunction can lead into a different department's dysfunction. And then that driver's upset and doesn't do something correctly. Well, then, management's upset, or then the office girls take a phone call from a customer. So, and who's upset about something. So it's funny how like one dysfunction within a company can kind of, flow through different departments, big or small. So it's just that always stuck with me. So I think I've used that class, not that I have the books or remember everything that Dr. Herman said, but it was just always really interesting and to understand. And, same like a hockey team, same like any setting that we're in, a family setting or a company setting, but it's just kind of how dysfunctions can kind of arise. And if you're not on top of them or try to settle it and correct things and you just let it go, how it can create other dysfunctions in the company. So
I just realized we didn't explain what sani-can was. So why don't you give a rundown of what you guys, in case somebody doesn't know? I assume you would, but
yeah. So sani-can, we have restrooms all over the interior, but we're a portable restroom company. And in the Fairbanks market, it's from Delta to Clear to Denana, Fox, North Pole, of course, that's where we're headquartered out of. In Fairbanks. So we're kind of like one of the bigger companies within the interior. And there's good competition in town. There's two other companies that we compete with. And, that's essentially what we were or what we are. With sani-can, we also had a septic division called Lamita Pumping and Thawing, who the previous owner had bought in like 2009. We actually just sold that last year.
Okay.
And I can get into that if you want, but septic pumping's a whole different beast. So we had a lot of success in the last 5 years with sani-can, where we've really been growing the company, and it was kind of like, hey, we've got this stepchild, the septic side of things that we're kind of like leaving by the wayside. And there's so many variables with that we just couldn't grow it. Lack of employees, CDL drivers, things of that nature. The price of equipment essentially is very expensive. So, we sold it about a year ago. Knock on wood, I think it was a really good move for us, where we're essentially focusing on just portable restroom rentals. So we have, our basic restroom, which is, the blue restrooms that you see all throughout town. We've got restrooms on trailers for construction sites so they can kind of wheel them up and down the road that they're working on. We have handicaps. We have sink stations. We have sanitizer stations, although those are kind of not as popular as they were 4 years ago. But yeah, that's we have event restroom trailers that are kind of like an RV. You might have seen them at a wedding.
Yeah.
They're nicer, like nice vinyl flooring and chlorine countertops. And
have you ever lost a restroom?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know just the logistics of all this. I'm just thinking of, I have way less, but like lock boxes on houses get lost with agents all the time. So I'm sure that
oh yeah, no.
like, hey, what happened to that one?
Yeah.
I don't know if they like serial numbers on them or something.
Yeah. Oh, and we do, and we do, and typically we do find them. I think I don't want to say this, but kind of around this time of year is sort of where we lose one or two on site. And it's kind of our understanding. I think hunters are taking them.
Oh, I see.
And getting them on a trailer and getting them up to their moose camp so they have a restroom. So, but once they're caught, we typically get them back. But obviously we have good software system. We have a good process where we know where every restroom's at. Okay. And if like on a construction site, if contractors are moving them, they usually call us and let us know because obviously they want their restroom serviced. Right. So when the driver comes by and it's not in that spot,
it's like,
so
overflown here.
But we have lost them, whether it's theft, damage, heavy equipment being around restrooms. I mean, we were on a training last year on Wainwright last spring when it was I think it was 55 below. And then it jumped up to 20 or 30 above, like within 2 days. And so all the snow in these tents up on the base, all that snow just came crashing down. And we had like a row of 20, 30 restrooms for a training that they were doing. And oh man, I think 15 of them were just completely caved in. Thank God nobody was in them. That would have been just crazy. But so it does happen. Yep.
So I never thought about this in the wintertime. What happens to the stuff going in? Is it how do you get that cleaned out and whatnot? I assume it's all frozen.
It is. Yeah. It is. Wintertime services is not the most fun for myself and for the employees, but it's still a job that we have to do. And so, kind of like, what's the guy's name on Dirty Jobs?
Mike Rowe.
Yeah. I wish he would come up and see what we have to do. It's
at 40 below. That'd be
at 40 below.
Episode,
it's not fun. It's hard. It's very hard work. We don't change our prices for winter servicing. So
you may want to reconsider that.
We do, but there is such a price point with competition that we've gotten down that it would be tough to do if we want to continue, to have the success that we're having. So kind of in terms kind of the old hockey terms, you strap up your boots and you just go to work and you get it done. Yeah. Now, granted, our drivers aren't servicing, 60 restrooms a day each like they are in the summer, so usually it is slowing down. So, but I don't know how graphic I want to get because of the nature of the beast that we're in. But
Go ahead.
It's we have to break that stuff that's in the tank and get it out with ladles and other tools. And,
oh Jesus!
And we call them chunk buckets, but they go on the back of the truck, and we got to put them in there because they obviously won't get sucked up. It's not the most pleasant, but we deal with it. We get it done.
Side note, you know the show Hoarders? Yeah. Have you seen the poop hoarder lady?
No.
Oh my God. You got to watch there's a YouTube shortened version of it, or just watch the whole thing, I guess. I couldn't finish. I was watching my wife literally about to vomit. I was actually gagging. This lady, her septic or whatever, her sewer line, I don't know where she was at, had not been working for decades. And she would she would poop in a bucket and she would throw the bucket in the backyard. Well, she got older and older and she couldn't lift the bucket anymore. So she had a coffee mug that she would scoop barehanded. She would scoop into a smaller bucket. I can't remember what it was, and go throw that and take multiple trips. Yeah. And I'm just I'm dying. Anyways, that reminded me of that, which makes me nauseous. But there's things in Fairbanks that we've seen that are pretty wow. So it's need a TV show made about this.
We probably could actually. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So we have such a large range of clientele, whether it's government work or somebody that owns a cabin somewhere that has just one restroom there. And we've got 1,200 restrooms, and summertime we're pretty much our yard's empty. Wintertime we have some back, but there's been winters where our yard's still pretty empty, and it's just it kind of depends on what's happening. And that's again kind of going back to budgeting. We just don't know when an event is, or when military needs something, or it just depends. So it's we're always go, and it's a 12-month year company for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up Mike Rowe, and that's honestly the reason I was excited to have you on.
Yep.
Is these really non-glamorous businesses? Yeah. Which I think you would agree, sani-can. Nobody is growing up. What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to move around porta potties. Yeah. Obviously, but it's something that you got out of. A stable job, being a commercial banker or whatever, you were seemingly, to me at least, excited to do so.
Yep.
And generally, I'm assuming it's a lot of the money, of course, but there's a lot of things other things that come with business, like autonomy of time and all those things. So, and you said you always were kind of pushing this way. Was it for you? Was the decision process like, hey, this is a great business that is an opportunity that's in my lap, and it's a great business by the numbers. Like, let's go for it, or was there any, like, again, I'm just trying to make it clear, like you were not looking for a Sani-can, I'm assuming.
No, I was looking for anything that had, whether it was good cash flow or, size. Sani-can was an established company. I mean, it's been around since the mid 80s. A lot of stuff about Sani-can I didn't know about, right, until I got into it. And even though I knew the numbers of Sani-can, that kind of gave me the decision, like, yeah, I can do this. I can run this. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things within the company and what our nature of the beast was pretty foreign to me. And that first year where I was still at the bank. And by the way, I have an excellent management team. I mean, my general manager, she is an absolute rock star. Her husband's my fleet manager. He's a go-getter, hard worker, keeps our equipment up to snuff all the time.
That's another thing. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. So you have this main business, but then you've got, I don't know what your fleet looks like.
Yeah.
But like, what's the maintenance on all that? Just having my own
Expensive.
personal truck. Yeah,
Expensive.
exactly. So you've got a position or however that works. So I think a lot of people forget whatever your main business is seldom the only thing you're doing, unless I don't even know what that would be, but to be a very small sect of businesses do that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, you've got your main business. Most people have like advertising and marketing that you got to get good at that. And now there's like social media, and now with you with vehicles, like there's a mechanic side to it.
Yeah. And so I'm the last person that should be, owning, 15 trucks in my fleet, because I can drive them, but it's, I'll go back to the office and be like, hey, Kent, this is making a knocking sound. I'm that guy that, he's like, what's it sound like? So
just to mess with you, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I did not grow up under a hood by any means.
Right.
So that was all, again, completely new to me. It took me a good couple months just to even know what equipment I had, like what truck did what, and again, that's where like the management side of things and the girls in the office do such a good job is, if somebody said without me knowing, like, hey, we need 5 restrooms to such and such, I would grab a truck and bring 5 restrooms out. But, certain trucks only hold 2 restrooms. Certain trucks hold 6. Some, maybe it's a trailer required. Sounds pretty elementary, but, when you're in the throes of it, it's, certain trucks are small, certain trucks are light, certain trucks are big, heavy duty for things. We bring a truck up 4 days a week to Fort Knox, and it's a 4-wheel drive Peterbilt semi truck.
Oh, nice.
And when something happens on that, it's pricey. It's not cheap. So, but our smallest truck is a F-250, flatbed with a $30,000, septic tank on the back of it.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong with that. It's, they're not cheap. Nothing is cheap in regards to any kind of vehicle repairs, as most everybody probably listening knows.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a huge eye opener of,
Well, I think the interesting point is there was, when I was coming up in high school, I've brought this up many times. It was, I feel like, the peak time of everybody saying, follow your passion. It was like at an all-time peak, like, don't worry about money. Just follow your passion. The money will come. If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Like a lot of these things, which there's truth to a lot of those things. But it got to a point where it's like, for one, you're in high school or college or whatever age, for one, you don't even know what you want to do. Like, I don't even know what I want to do. And I'm at 30, I'm still like, you're always kind of looking. So this idea that you have this passion that just like everybody somehow knows what this thing is going to be is ridiculous on its own. But then it pushes you away from, like, if you just had that mind frame when you're looking at what I'm going to do with my life and like, is this my passion? No, Sani-can's not my passion. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it kind of closes you off to the reality of like, there's good things that are very rewarding financially, personally, professionally, that are not, starting the next great app that's going to be on the App Store. And that's the other thing too, is you've moved into I was just hearing this. It was really interesting. The guy who co-founded PayPal, Peter Thiel, was talking about how technology has been moving so slow in the past 100 years. And I think it was Joe Rogan. Was like, what are you talking about? Oh, you look 100 years ago, like everything's different. Yeah. He's like, in a sense, he says the bits, the little like technological stuff, like in a computer, like is gone, internet, all that stuff. That's what everyone always talks about. But he says like, we went to the moon. How long has it been since we've been to the moon? And like the real physical technology has kind of been like almost forgotten. Like a lot of the jets and planes and things we've been using for decades and decades and decades. which not to get totally off kilter, but I think it kind of goes together where there's this like almost, I'm hoping like a swing back towards these micro dirty jobs, these these physical things where it's like, hey, these are businesses that take a ton of capital to get going.
Yep.
And you're not like some Joe Schmo who can just go get their real estate license in a couple months is not going to start another sani-can. There's a way more like high barrier to entry. Your competition is further reduced by that same factor and all of that. So there's like all these things where it's like sometimes like look what you want your life to be and look at the opportunities and skills like set before you. So you've kind of painted this story of your life, which is, I know we're very surface level, but you can see it's like you went through 15 years of being in banking and looking at, businesses, finances. It's like, hello, obviously that's going to help, when you get into that business realm. But before you got into banking, was this a skill that you had or were looking to garner like in when you were in at UAF doing college and stuff? Were you honing these like finance and business skills, or was it less so, I'm sure, than actually doing it?
probably realistically in college, no. My focus
honing
was
a different skill there.
The motto with my parents was C's get degrees, son. Just get your diploma. We sent you up there, just get your diploma. Obviously, my wife and with our kids, that's not the same motto. It's A's and being focused on school. But kind of like what you said is if you do something you love, you'll be rewarded. My wife and I, ironically, we're just talking about that. Yes, you see all those quotes and you hear all that stuff. And just like sani-can, I mean, sani-can's not all, flowers and roses, of course, by any means, no pun intended. It's actually the complete opposite, but it's,
nobody was accusing you of that.
Yeah. No, we've got our difficulties just like any company does. I look back at, so I'm an avid golfer. When I was done playing hockey, I'd always kind of dabbled in golf as like, just being an athlete, in junior high and high school. And then, the off seasons of college, even up here, we stayed up here, and trained a lot. So, you'd have some downtime and we'd go golf, and I always enjoyed it. I'm really competitive. So when I was done with hockey, like the biggest thing I think that hurt the worst was I didn't have anything to compete against. So I picked up golf and just got really competitive into golf. And it could be $1 a skin type, bet. And if it's just, you just put something to challenge, I love that stuff. So, but like going into golf, like that whole like PGA Live, and what you listen to, like a lot of the golfers, they say, and, I mean, here I am. I love golf. Like if somebody said, hey, Keith, you're going to go to the PGA, which obviously would never happen. But like, I mean, that would be a dream job, right? Like that would be what those quotes say, where you're like, yeah, like this is, I'm enjoying the fruits of my labor. I'm a really good golfer. I'm getting paid all this money and stuff. But then you ask the kids, those same kids that grew up playing and loving golf, and now they're a professional, right? It's a job. I mean, bottom line is it's a job, and they want to break from golf. Like they want more family time, and they want to be able to go travel and do their thing. So it's really like, yes, did it set them up where they can live in a very nice house and, money is not an issue? Sure. But do they actually, like, you talk to some pro golfers, not that I've talked to a lot of pro golfers, but like in the interviews, you hear it, like, they don't love golf. Like they want a big check and go to live, and, they guaranteed me $55 million or $300 million, and they get more family time and less schedule and this and that. And that's why they're doing it. It's because they don't want to grind out, 4 days on the tour trying to, get in the top, 20 to get actual payday.
Well, maybe I'm thinking the wrong sport, but isn't golf like where you win? I know so little. One of the big events, you're always allowed to take time off, but you can take time off and come back and kind of retain your position. Like that's one of the bonuses. As you start winning, play golf.
As you start winning the bigger tournaments, you don't have a full schedule. You get to kind of start picking and choose what tournaments you want to go to, for sure. But like again, going back to the do what you love and it will reap rewards. I mean, do I wake up in the morning and say, yes, I'm going to go clean 60 restrooms today on a real busy route and 85 degree weather in the summer and, construction sites with equipment blocking the restrooms left and right and dust going everywhere and on top of what we're cleaning? No, I mean, it's just like anything. I get up and I'm like, yeah, I got to go to work. I'm en route today. Yeah. And so, do I enjoy it? That part? No, I don't enjoy that part. I do enjoy being around in a truck and seeing business owners like on construction sites or wherever we're servicing, and striking up a conversation. again, 16 years in banking, I knew a lot of people in town and a lot of the companies, because either I was their banker or I was competing for their business, or they were just players in town that I knew, whether it's from like chamber events and things like that. So that part's nice, you know, and I, as a business owner of a fairly large company, it's kind of nice to have that clout and being able to be in town and people say, oh, that's Keith, he owns sani-can, you know?
Yeah.
So yes, that part's great. You know, going back to the dirty work, no, it's not the, you know, it is not glamorous.
Well, there's no 100% enjoyment all day long,
Right.
with anything, no matter what it is. Like you pick the most fun thing in your life, like you're saying, like golf. You just absolutely love golf. I know the feeling. Like I'm super competitive. I do jujitsu, which I've talked about a ton on this podcast, but I love doing jujitsu. And there's a hard realization that I'm too old. I'm never going to be good enough to be like a top level jujitsu athlete. Like it's just not happening. So I had to swallow that. But then even still, it's like, I don't really know that I would want that. You know, there's always something hard that's going on. So people, I think, really downplay that. They overplay it in whatever position they're currently in.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm miserable because of these reasons. And there's like legit things like you getting out of banking and stuff. There's like real reasons to move out of fields, for sure. But it's not all cotton candy and rainbows, no matter where you're going. So, you know, make your informed decisions, you know, with that in mind, where it's like, I love doing this thing, but the minute it becomes a job, it really does change. And that's the other thing with jiu-jitsu or all these things. My first inkling is like, how can I turn this into money? And I've always wanted to be a business owner. And that's like kind of my first thought. And maybe when I was like 22 or 23, it was probably my wife, which I'm not going to call her a dream killer, but she's basically like, you could just have hobbies. That's true. And they're way more fun. You know, there's no pressure. You know, it's like I do my thing. If I miss a practice, it's like not the end of the world. You know?
Exactly.
So it's very different. But yeah, just not to be, it sounds bad because it feels like we're now the dream killers saying, hey, what you want isn't what you think it is. But it's true. It's like you have these goals and go for them and go heavy and find out for yourself. But like the goal of an easy life is not only unattainable, but it's not even like a desirable thing. Like you want to have that hard things. You want to have things that are difficult to overcome. Or you're going to have a pretty sucky life, to be honest, in my opinion. Like doing more and more hard things should be the goal, not trying to weed out the things that you don't like in your life, you know, to a degree. So.
And then there's other, you know, again, variables. I think I've said that word a couple times, but, you know, it's when I was in banking, going back to that, the one thing I realized, and I really enjoyed it, I actually thought it was fascinating, was like, Blake, okay, you own a pizza stand, right? Okay. And your company is having success, and, you know, everybody knows, you know, Blake, and just as the guy that runs this awesome pizza, you know, joint here in town. Well, you know, let's say I owned a pizza joint too, the exact same prices, everything was the same, and you had success and I didn't, you know, and what, kind of going back again to like organizational theory and behaviors, why is, you know, it's the same industry, you're in the exact same industry, yet you're having all the success and I'm struggling. Why is that? And being in banking, you know, of course, like, you know, if I guess a truck driver or something, somebody that's hauling material up north and we're financing, you know, semis for them. You know, why is this one doing so well and this one not? You know, and I mean, there can be so many factors into that, but I always thought that was fascinating that, you know, you just sort of assumed, okay, well, you're selling these widgets, so you guys should both be successful and doing good things. But no, it's literally who that person is as the owner that's going to dictate how that company's, you know, operating and the success of that company.
I think there's a crossover to, let's say, pricing houses, where you look at we'll say the pictures of a house on the like Zillow and stuff, and you look at all the things, and they're very similar, and one sold in 2 days and one didn't. And same as with the business, like what you're just describing there. I think on paper, things can look very, very similar, but the minute you walk into either one, or we won't say the minute, you spend a day with either one, I think it'll become very obvious. Same with houses. When you walk through a house, like, oh, this is why this place hasn't sold. You know, these pictures were a little misleading. It's not yours. Totally. And then same with the business, where it's like, you're offering all the same things, but we walk in and, you know, nobody's there to take our order for 10 minutes. We're waiting around, or, you know, all the things where you're like, hey, these are very obvious reasons that, you know, they're not going to, that doesn't hit a balance sheet and accept your lower profits, I guess. But so that's interesting.
And, you know, and another part, you know, and I had amazing customers, right? In the years of banking, I mean, just top notch people, great, smart people, driven. But I also had, you know, customers that were complete opposite of that, you know, and some of those real successful companies, you know, not were some of the most idiots running them,
Yeah.
and that was a struggle being on the banker side of the desk, being like, oh my God, you're an absolute moron, and I can't stand you, but like your company's so successful, and you're just like
something there.
And that was an eye opener for me, to be like, well, I'm an idiot too, so yeah, maybe I could actually give this business a try and see what happens. So,
right. That's hilarious.
and yeah, I mean, kidding aside, I am being serious. Like, I was like, well, I know I've got my, quirks, and I am not the smartest person by any means. But yeah, if Joe Schmo can go over there and run this company, like let's dive in and just do this and see what happens, and it's a huge risk. I mean, again, that first year where I was at the bank and the company was doing its thing, I mean, I was nervous. Like I hardly knew a whole lot about the company. I knew the numbers, and I knew, I knew, I guess, like the hockey coaching side of thing on how to make this thing work and keeping your employees happy. And that's a big thing is, employees are running the company, right? You got to keep them happy. Whatever that means, and everybody's got their own life, and you got to understand, like, hey, John Doe is going to go home after this day, and he's got, wife and kids, and he's got to go do this and this and get that thing done. And so you got to really understand, like, hey, these people, they're real. Like, my employees they're human beings.
Yeah.
They're not just like, hey, you're working for me and I'm going to crack my whip at you. They're human beings. They've got their own life. My wife and I say this all the time. Everybody's got their own shit.
Yeah.
So it's, that was kind of like the thing I knew I could try to excel at and be good at, kind of like on the hockey background too. Some kids you can yell at and that motivates them. Some kids, you yell at them, they're going to shut down on you. And it is no different in corporate America or small business. Some employees you can motivate through, more stern words, if you will. Some you got to coddle, and as much as you don't want to do it, you do. Like, you got to keep everybody doing their thing and motivated to show up for you. Because if without employees, sani-can, we wouldn't be a company, right? We could be a real small mom and pop shop. Looking at like all my risk factors, if that's the case, we could definitely do that and slow this thing down and still be okay. But at the same time, I do want to grow a company and see its success. And, that's going to be, the way I treat employees, the way my managers treat employees, the way I treat my managers, the way that we communicate, the way that we agree or disagree on things. That's all, that doesn't matter if it's a portable restroom company or if it's a real estate company. That's just how you have to operate a company.
Yeah. I think it's so underestimated what that does with employees. Like, being at a place that you legitimately like the people.
Yep.
And you're happy to be there. Again, almost regardless of the task. The task can be really hard. People are willing to do hard things almost always. But if they go home and they feel terrible every night because whatever reason, it's like they don't want to, and again, pay. It's like, oh, I can't keep employees in this and that. I'm paying good. It's like, well, it might be something else going on there.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people I've talked to, and especially the older I get, that are in positions that they know they're being underpaid for.
Yeah.
But they're like, the alternative is not to be at this business, or, maybe it's a nonprofit. That's kind of common as well. Where it's like, what I do here and the difference I make or the people I'm with are worth the lower pay that I'm getting.
Yeah.
Not that should always be the goal, but it's like, oh, I thought pay was everything. It's like, no, not if you're miserable,
Yeah.
and,
Totally.
you're not enjoying what you're doing.
Yep.
So as someone who didn't start a business, but who bought a business and is, growing it and going from there, what would be like if somebody wanted to kind of follow in your footsteps, and we're looking at doing it that way, what would be like your number one thing you would tell them to do? Like, look at the numbers, or like, I don't know, what do you think would be the most important bit before getting into it?
Yeah, boy, that's a good question.
That's a big one. There's a lot.
I think we touched on a lot of that stuff. Whether it's, operating it like a sports team, or I don't know if, I don't even know if that's the right way to do it. I guess make sure that, like, if you're all in on it, like, you're all in on it. Love my employees, but they get to close that truck door at the end of the day and go home. Like, there's no risk to their livelihood when they go home, where, at night I'm still, I get a text about something, or, a big piece of equipment's down and it's going to cost XYZ. And, we've got this big delivery the next day. Those are the stresses that are then on the owner's side. So you got to be ready for that stuff. as much as I hated a text, hey, I need $200,000 tomorrow morning in banking, it's no different like owning a company or, or an employee is sick, or they've got to go do something and they can't be at work tomorrow. And how do we fill that role in? Or, God, software crashes on you. I mean, geez, that's like, holy smokes. Like, what are we going to do tomorrow when all of our software went down? And, thank God I have a really good GM that will handwrite, and she has a memory like no other. So she memorizes everything. But like, those are the stresses that as an owner that you've got to know are going to happen. Is the money that we get if we're successful great? Yeah, that's fantastic. Financial freedom is what everybody, in America, that's American dream, right? Like you want to try and have financial freedom. That is fun. But at the same time, like, when the money's not coming in and, you're just spending a ton of money on expenses and other things of that nature, like that's pretty like not depressing, but pretty like, it doesn't make you in a good mood, right? And you still got to walk in the office and smile and be like, hey, you wrecked a truck yesterday. Did you not? Like, let's see what else can happen today. Like, oh, wow. Like that's not fun stuff, but you got to be mentally prepared for it. It's always going to happen. As much as you want to talk about the success of a company, there's always downfalls too. The guard is always up, right? Like, it could be July, which is usually typically our busiest time, or June, July, especially in Fairbanks with like golden days and summer solstice and all the different events. And, on top of all the construction and everything, like it's just a very busy time. You sprinkle in some forest fires in there too, and you're just absolutely slammed.
So are you like delivering for forest fires, or you're just saying with like what?
Yeah, just like, you got fires in. Well, smoke jumpers have to use the restroom, right? So like we're taking equipment out to wherever those are at. They could be like the last two fires we've been at were in Anderson.
Okay.
So, that's
only on road systems though. You're not like flying
Oh
these
no,
things
we're
in.
not flying them in.
I was like, all right.
They might pick something up and,
really?
and helicoptered into a remote area for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's just it's just another added stress, right? Like, nobody in town's happy during forest fires because it's smoky, it's hot.
Yeah.
The smell's bad, the air quality's bad. We're boots on the ground. We're right there by those fires, and our drivers are doing it. But I kind of lost my train of thought there where I was going with
that's
the
okay. I interrupted you.
But that's totally fine.
I wanted to ask about the financing side because you have a really unique perspective on that. So I know there's a million ways to finance businesses, but for someone that's out there wanting to do it, more money is always better, but I feel like the big chunk of change up front is always kind of that limiting factor for a lot of people. Have you seen, whether with yourself or just doing, the banking side, have you seen some more creative ways where it's like, hey, you don't need, $300,000 to, get going on this thing? Or is it something like, no, you should be saving this up before you make that leap?
Yeah. That's a tough one, right? Cause it's kind of like I said it earlier, the American dream. It's getting harder and harder. I mean, look at people wanting to buy a house. I mean, geez, you got to save up like $200,000 to put it down, on a house. Like that's crazy. I think in regards to like financing a company is, you want to look at, how really like invested are they? We call it skin in the game, and that's essentially what a down payment is on a house to a banker is. Okay, this is their skin in the game. How motivated are you to actually make it work? I mean, there's some really cool business stories in this town where, people, very successful companies that you see today. I mean, they started off selling, their product out of the trunk of a car, I mean, and then, Dave Ramsey, I think he's got his podcast, and who was it? I think it was Theo Vaughn and him, and it was great. Yeah. It was a hilarious podcast. That was a good episode. Yeah. But he talks about, buying a pressure washer and spraying sidewalks. Well, a pressure washer is what? $100, $200 tops for a nice one, high powered one. And, next thing you know, you did a good job of this sidewalk, and, the next client calls you, and, word of mouth, same as a realtor, referrals, word of mouth, all that stuff is very important. So you can always start off small and grow it from there, or you can buy in and, risk everything you got, and that's, Mark Cuban was just talking about that with, I was watching Dude Perfect 30 for 30, and he brings that up, where, these guys are wanting to build like a theme park now, in Austin, I think. and they're putting their houses up for collateral,
Yeah.
you know, and their houses are not, you know, houses you see in Fairbanks. I mean, they're $20-30 million houses because this is a $200 million project.
Yeah.
And, you know, even Mark Cuban said, like, that means you're all in, you know, and we did that in banking all the time, you know, and some people would be like, yeah, I got that equity in the house. I can secure the house. And some people would be like, you're not taking my house. First off, I don't want your house. Like, I want you just to repay this debt that we're,
Exactly.
you know, that
That's
we
the
lend
goal.
you. That's the goal.
Yeah.
The last thing we ever want to do is actually go and start a foreclosure. That's the worst, you know?
Yeah.
But it also tells you like how really invested people are. If they're serious, then yeah, put up your house for collateral, you know,
it's a hard line, because I think it's an interesting thought process, because there's so many people that have failed, and you see that, and you can't escape it. And there's so many people that have been successful, and a lot of those successful people have done it with an insane amount of risk.
Yep.
I've listened to a lot of real estate investors in particular that are like, yeah, I did my first few deals all through credit cards.
Yeah.
And they're like, I wouldn't recommend that. But it's also like, well, that's how they got really successful. So it
Yep.
can work, but then there is always this like, and again, it's totally up to the person doing it. Like me, I'm not going to do the credit card debt way. I'm just like, I'm not willing to take that risk anymore.
Yep.
But maybe when I was 20 or before I had kids, you know, it would have been like things just change in your life. So knowing that, I guess that risk profile, like what you're talking about, are you willing to put it all on the line and then some, where it's like, oh, if this goes south, like we're going to be moving into a rental.
Yeah.
Like, is that a place that you want to, you know, you're willing to go? Or it's like, no, that's should never be an option. It's like, well, don't do it that way then.
Yeah.
But I have found with businesses, and I'm not, again, I don't sell a lot of commercial. This is just being friends with people in the community. There are the biggest opportunities seem to be, and this is you included, 100% who you know.
Yeah.
Where it's, you know, whether you're working at the business and that person is needing to sell or retire or whatever it is and coming up, or, you know, you weren't technically in the business, but somebody you knew well and you knew the business well and you were side by side there. I feel like that's where a lot of the best opportunities for a transfer can happen. So I'm thinking of one in particular where it was a young guy who is taking over a business and basically had basically zero out of pocket, very, very minimal out of pocket, because the way you were able to structure like owner financing and different things that could go along with it. So, but that's beside the point. You may still need money. I'm not saying that, but if you're looking to take over, and this is someone who's not done it, but just, you know, getting in with these businesses that you are passionate about. Like, there's a lot of cool things. And I always ask anytime I like a business that I think is cool. Like, for one, I always bring up Life Water Engineering.
Yeah.
And I am not in the secession ranks at all on that, but I'd love to be. But I'm always like, hey, thinking about selling this? They're like, no, we got some people who've worked here forever that are, you know, kind of moving up. But they're just like these cool businesses throughout town. So if this is something you're like legit interested in doing, for one, like maybe do go work for them. Like, you know, whatever the business could be. If that's a direction you want to go, because I think there could be a much smoother transition where you are skilled in that field and you are familiar with that very particular business. You'll hopefully know the books better than, you know, any Joe Schmo coming off, and you know the seasonality, all the little things that if you just look at a business for 1 month window, you're never going to know, especially here in Fairbanks where the weather is so variable and everything changes so much. I don't know. I think that's the smoothest way to do it. But again, or you could just have a bunch of capital or your house. Yeah,
exactly.
And go for it.
Yeah. Well, and you know, you're spot on. I mean, it is who you know. It's how you've conducted yourself, you know, or what you've done for your company or for your clients. You know, I mean, that goes a long way. You know, but yeah, I did coming up here and being a hockey player help 100%. Like, you know, I had name recognition, right? My first real career job was because I was a decent hockey player at the university. There's no lie about it, because I was not a good student. If like my professors knew, like, holy shit, Keith went and became a commercial lender, like they'd been like, what, that kid? Like, there's no way. But I did, you know, and you know, it's like, I faked it till I made it. Right. Like, you know, my boss threw a file on my desk, like, you know, month one, and I didn't have a clue. I didn't even know what financing was. It's literally a funny story. Like, my wife was like, hey, we need to buy a house. Like, we were right out of college, and I didn't have I think I had just gotten into banking. And I was like, and I was a lender, and I was like, what are you talking about? Buy a house? Like, I have zero money. And she was like, well, no, like, it's smart to buy now. Like prices are good and, we can turn around and flip it. This is my wife who's in education. And I was like, oh, and I was being a smart ass. I was like, we're really curious. Like, I'm just going to go, come up with 140,000. And she goes, you finance it, dummy. And I was like, finance it? Like, oh shit. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Like I'm financing for other people. Like, oh, I guess I didn't even know that's what you did to buy a house. I mean, that's how, and hilarious. Here I am as a lender. So did I luck out in that? 100%.
Yeah.
Did like anything when it comes to sports or competitive nature did I want to be the best at what I was doing? 100%. So like, I started really asking all the questions and had great mentors at the bank to like, be like, hey, okay. And then starting to understand the lingo and all that stuff. And over time, next thing you know, you're building up this great portfolio, and you're meeting all these people. Like right now, like same thing, last 5 years of my banking career, I wasn't depressed, but I was pretty like disgruntled where I was like, is this the rest of my life? Like, is this, I got to do this till I'm 64 when I can retire and draw Social Security? Like, that sounds miserable to me. Like, that was me personally. I was like, no way. And that was kind of, I will say it was depressing. It was like, wow, this is what I got another 40 years left of this to do this thing. Like, this is crazy. At the same time, I wasn't a software engineer. I didn't know how to write code. I played sports and, probably partied too much in college and, got C's and all my stuff because that's all I, was told at home I had to do to just get my diploma. But, when it came to hockey, which I was passionate about, I worked hard. Everybody on our team worked hard. If you didn't work hard, you were essentially exiled, from the team, which is so funny nowadays. I'm jumping ship here, but like listen to kids now at like age 14 that are playing hockey. If there's a kid that's out there just busting their ass, he gets ragged on by the team. Yeah? Like, you're Tony Tryhard. That drives me nuts because I'm like, I hate dude. That. Like, stop ripping this kid. We love him. He's not as skilled as you are, or he doesn't score as many goals as you on the bench, but like he's busting his ass. Like that kid's going to not hockey aside, who gives a shit if he plays pro hockey? Yeah. That kid's going to be successful. Yeah. Like that's what you want, right? I mean, that's the whole reason why you throw your kids in sports isn't to go become a pro athlete. It's like learn some success, learn some work ethic and commitment to your trade. And so,
yeah, they take being cool is not caring, and my 10-year-old has had a few friends around the house where that was kind of like you want to like, and it's kind of weird for me because again they're getting older. Before, if I asked you want to go do this thing with dad, whatever it was, they're like yes, like let's do it. I'm like all right, we had him over there. I was like hey, you want to teach you how to start a campfire, and the friend is like nah, I guess and I was like afterwards I talked to my daughter and I was like listen. I don't know what that's about. I said, but it is like okay to be excited about things and want to do stuff. Like, totally. Like I don't know how to like get that across, of course, because they're gonna be like, Dad, you suck. At some point. But it's true because and there's a lot of on that same groove, a lot of high energy kids that are one getting medicated at the worst case we'll say, but are just kind of getting put down where it's like, listen, there are so many low energy people, adults in the world that don't want to do what they got to do. This is like going to be a superpower. They're going to mow through the competition wherever they're at. And maybe they're a little hard to handle when they're 3 and 6 and 10, 12, whatever. But it's like, hey, you're going to be loving that. It's like, how's that guy still going? It's 10 o'clock at night. We've been going all day. It's like, hey, he's always been that way. So it's awesome though. Yeah. So like I was kind of like, well, what is there I can do out there besides banking? And it was always on my mind, especially the last 5 years of my banking career. And it was always like, well, what can I do? And it was depressing because I was like, well, I don't know, there's not a lot of opportunities for, I was in my mid 30s at that time. There's not a lot of opportunities. I'm not a welder. I'm not, whatever, like a code writer. That's kind of the wave of the future, right? Like mom and pop shops are going away and these big box stores are coming in, unfortunately. And I was always like, man, this is what I'm going to be doing. There's also, even today, there's a ton of opportunity, even in our town. There really is. You look at, I would say 80% of the businesses, maybe even more, in town. What's that age demographic? There's a huge demographic of baby boomers that are still operating their companies. Yeah. They don't want to do it anymore. There's opportunity. What that opportunity is, I don't know. It's, luckily, knock on wood, I found an opportunity. And so we're running with it.
Am I open to something else? 100%. Like if there's something else that comes to my, I mean, I'm always looking for an opportunity. I don't know what that is. I don't know if I'd be passionate about it. I don't know if I'd lie to myself about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in what's going on. Knowing people helps for sure, because you kind of know what you got going. Being a banker probably helped a lot, because I kind of knew all that stuff, who was doing what and who was selling and buying. But there's a ton of opportunity to this day. It's naturally happening. There's a lot of businesses in town that are needed, that are service industries, or have their niche here, even in Fairbanks, that are, people want out, they want to sell. So however you structure that deal, start with talking. My dad's my best quote I ever got. My dad was a great guy. Still is a great guy. And he'd always tell me, like, son, just ask. And I'd be like, well, what do you mean just ask? He's like, just ask. What's the worst they could say? And you're like, no. And they're like, that's it. Did that kill you? Like, just go ask, like, go ask somebody for something. And that helped in banking too. Like, go ask, like, hey, are you in need of, financing, on the cold calls that I dreaded. But it's like, he's right. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay, well, hey, good talking with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the worst that can happen if you ask. Like,
so that is an interesting bit about, we'll bring up cold calling. That was like, I would, I've said this many times, but I would bring an extra change of shirt in, when I first started in real estate, cause I would just sweat through.
The pits.
Oh my gosh, man. I was so nervous. And I would do, since I've been selling like literally thousands of cold calls. And if you look back, I've been yelled at maybe like 3 times.
Yeah.
Like very, very low.
Yeah.
And, a handful of times got hung up on, and maybe a few people like rude, but it's like, for the most part, they're like, oh, no, thank you. Or really the most part, they don't answer. But the second best is like, no, I'm not interested. And it's like, people are generally pretty nice. But yeah, it's true. Cause it's like, that is in hockey, jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm literally getting choked out. I won't say unafraid, but way less nervous than picking up a call and maybe getting a verbal rejection from somebody who won't even remember me 10 minutes later. It feels worse for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So
somebody said, hey, you're going to take 15 of these pucks to your face at practice today.
That's not bad.
Or your collarbone or your groin. Or you're going to go on a day blitz and cold call people. I would take the hockey ring all day long.
I know.
Because cold calling was just like, that was the worst.
If anybody's listening right now and you do cold calling and you are unafraid, or it's like your strong suit, you have like this superpower of sales that you will be the top at wherever you go. Like cold calling and door knocking are kind of still, as much as like a trope it is, they still work.
They still work. Yeah.
If
anything, it gives you a chance to just say, have a conversation with one of the heads of the company, or you always get to the leaders, right? You always got to see who your players are within that company and get face to face with them, and it does help. Yeah, but same thing. I think if I pulled all my old shirts out of the closet, I probably got pit rings and all those too. I mean, it is the absolute worst.
For sure.
But with that opportunity, the one thing, even with sani-can now, like, I don't know what the future of sani-can holds. There's competition. There could be, new barriers of entry that are coming in.
What do you want it to look like? I was going to ask.
I want to keep growing it.
Do you want to like expand geographically, or?
Yes and no. If we expanded geographically, which I would, of course, that's an option.
Right.
There's a lot of hurdles on that too. Like, usually if we wanted to expand, we'd want to acquire, an existing company.
That infrastructure.
It's kind of, and I learned this in the first year. I mean, this is kind of a little too extreme, but it's kind of like turf wars in our industry. Like, there's a company in Delta, but we have a red flag contract right here in town with Heilson. Well, there's Greeley out there. And so part of the red flag training was they were operating something in Greeley. So we had to send restrooms over to Greeley. Well, that company saw our truck coming through, and he called our office. What the hell are you guys doing?
Oh, really?
And I totally understand it, right? Like, he's like, what are you guys, you're coming into our market, he was upset, you know? And we had to explain to him, hey, like, we didn't want to be there, bud. Like, this is part of our contract that we had to, adhere to. So that's why we're here, and through calmness and this and that, like, he understood it. And and rightfully so. I'd probably be the same way if I saw, the Delta company coming into Fairbanks in our market when we've got, good competition and tough competition in town. There's 2 other portable companies that are very strong and do well too. And so, it's sort of if we wanted to expand, we kind of stay in our area. Like, yes, we have competition in this area. Everybody's got to eat. I get that. Like everybody's got families, everybody's got employees that, their families got to eat. So that's, I totally understand that.
Right.
Do I want 100% market share? Yeah, sure. So I can go on more vacations and golf. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, is that realistic? Probably not. So like to answer your question, yes, the future of sani-can, do we want to grow it? 100%. How do we grow it? We got to grow it through our reputation. We got to grow it through our customer service. We got to, grow it through, if we're going to tell you, hey, we're going to charge you this to service this restroom, we need to do a good job so that person calls us back. Or that, same as real estate, like that person then refers you to, 5 other people, and those 5 other people refer you to 25 other people, you do one bad thing, well, 100 people know about it, right?
Yeah,
like everybody wants to talk about like, oh God, they came in, they didn't do this and this and this. And they're the ones that are going to be the most vocal than, the humble job of somebody just saying, hey, thanks, it looks great. They're going to tell 5 people like, oh, sani-can was reliable. They showed up on time. They picked up the restroom and they said they were going to.
Yeah.
So, within our company, we have to, like, customer service is key, right? Like we have to do the best job. We're sani-can, not sani-can't. That's like kind of our internal slogan within the office.
For sure.
I hate saying no. Do I have to say no on certain things? 100% I do.
Right.
I hate it. That's kind of almost that same feeling of cold calling.
Yeah.
When you can't do somebody a solid, no pun intended, and actually do the job, and you're just like, I'm leaving money on the table, but maybe it just really doesn't fit what we want to do. And that person, we didn't give them the resolve they wanted. That's horrible. I hate saying no.
Yeah.
But, we want to grow it. I don't, if that means, picking up more market share in Fairbanks, let's compete. And if it's expanding, yes, I think those are going to be tougher hurdles just because, one, we're not in that community. We would have to have employees in that community. You have to have that trust with those employees. Yeah. So that would be tough. But I mean, if we could acquire something and it worked out, I'm always going to look into something like that. The one piece of advice I'd have any current business owner, future business owner, the past business owners already know this. I saw my parents do it. I've seen my in-laws do it. I've seen hundreds of my customers do it. And I say this today, and hopefully I say it, in the future. But if you're a business owner, your number one, of course, your focus is your employees and in your company. But something that needs to be on your mind every day, and it's on my mind every day, is your succession planning. And why I say that is because I've seen so many great companies in town just bringing in contracts left and right. It could be a construction company, and they're crushing it, and they're building buildings left and right, and they're having these banner years, year after year after year after year. Well, you get older, and you want to start slowing down, right? And you had this $20 million company in 2015, right? And you're getting older. Or, maybe you've hit some bad luck in your life, or your employees, aren't what they were at one point, or, whatever hurdles those are that arise daily. Right. And now you're in your, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you want to sell this company for $20 million because that's what it was 10, 12 years ago, but you didn't keep that up. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're going to the bank and you're saying, hey, like, I want to sell this. And, you get an offer for like $1 million. And it's like a slap in your face, right? Like, no, this is a $20 million business. And the banker's like, no, it's like $1 million. Like, you have old, worn out equipment. You didn't upkeep that. Your inventories, hasn't turned in, 3-5 years. You're limited on your employees. You've got way tougher competition than you had, 5-10 years ago. No, this company's valued at $1 million. Yeah. And they hate your guts for it, right? Like, they act like you took $19 million off their plate. And I'm like, no, man, like, that's essentially what it is. Like, well, I have all these contracts. Well, no, you don't. They're not actual contracts on paper. They're your clientele. Yeah. And if somebody else comes in and runs this and they know you're out, they can go to, this company or that company. Like, they're not, you don't have an actual contract with them where they have to go with you. Yeah. They can go somewhere else. Like, and they might, if they're not treated the same way you treated them.
You're seeing a ton of these businesses that just eventually they just close down. They just shut the doors. They don't sell.
Yep.
Nobody takes over. And I think it is the biggest hole in the market. Like, when you're talking real estate investing, everybody is trying to either make an Airbnb or do a rental or something.
Yep.
And the numbers for that, just to be frank, in this market are a little bit tight these days. And cash flow is hard to get around here with interest rates and various reasons. But then you look at these businesses that are legit money makers, and the way you value businesses, like compared to real estate cash flow, it's just like it is way more work and effort and more skill based, of course. But businesses just bring in much more money for the money put into them as compared to like a more passive thing like real estate, which is not really that passive. But it's been a few years now, but it just reminds me so much. We had a septic installation company that was the biggest in town. They did 2/3 of all septics in the whole area. They just shut down, and it's like, oh my gosh, they were good at what they did. And, I don't know the whole story, but what it sounds like is they just didn't have the people to take over the next. It wasn't, everyone thinks when a business shuts down, they weren't making any money. And it's like, in a lot of cases, they're just tired and they're done. And they didn't have a retirement plan really, or they've got enough already. They're whatever financially set. And they're like, well, I don't care anymore. It's become this thing, just like with banking, which was ultimately sounds like a great thing in your life. You learned a whole bunch. But there's always times where it's like, all right, this is no longer the thing it needs to be for me in my life. And then business owners feel that same way. Even if they loved it for the first 40 years, they're now 70 years old. And it's like, all right, I don't want to be installing septics anymore or whatever. So I think there is I'm talking to myself too, because I've thought about this a lot. There is what do you call it? I'm going back to my old preacher ways from my parents, but like a mantle put upon the young people where it's like, hey, there's a responsibility for us to like be able to step up and take those businesses on, because what happens is like, not only does this company just shut down, it's like, oh, that's sad. There's money left on the table. Like that's one part. It's like, no, we had 2/3 of our septic installations disappear. So we had to have a lot of other little businesses come up in the real estate realm where like our deals were getting extended because we couldn't get, a new septic installed in time or whatever it is. So there's this trickle down effect. And I think ultimately these things do get filled, but when you're especially in a Fairbanks market, we're like almost like an island here. And this has been a contract ever since this has been a problem like with contractors and different things ever since I've moved here, where there's just not enough people. So it's like, hey, I'm full for the whole season. You want this thing to get done? It'll be next year or 2 years from now or whatever it is. So anyways, I think there's a lot of responsibility on younger people, and that doesn't necessarily mean a 21-year-old, 30, 40-year-old that's still got 20, 30 years left of a working life, where it's like, hey, we should be looking at how can this get passed down and remain valuable to the whole community here. So,
no, absolutely. I coached Hutchison High School hockey for like 7 years. I can't remember 2009, 2000, through 2014 or something like that. But I'll tell you what, those kids were my favorite kids. Because they were all like, I'd coached West Valley and nothing against West Valley kids or anything of that nature. But my son goes to West Valley, but no, it was just a different breed, man. Like these kids would show up to the rink with like boots on, Carhartts, dirty hands. They were working on cars at school and doing like welding and diesel mechanic stuff. Every time I run into a Hutchison High School, this was a good plug for Hutchison High School. Every time I run into those kids, like now they're all 20s, 30s, they've got kids, they're married. They've all got awesome careers, whether they're working at Fort Knox or they're working for they're doing their own mobile welding or, working in comms or whatnot. I mean, like all of them were like that was the group of kids that went to Hutch. That's what they were all into. They were actual workers.
20 years ago, those positions were kind of looked down upon. Like less than. Like you should be in you want a white collar job, not the blue collar.
4-year degree and all that. No, these kids are all successful in our town. Like I see them at a hockey game and, hey, how you doing? And they tell me, and it's like, good for you. Like it's badass, And you nailed it. I mean, our younger generation's going to have to step up and work, and that's just the nature of the beast. And, COVID really, that was a scary time, right? Especially for us at sani-can and our employees. It's like, and it still hasn't really recovered. I mean, finding employees is tough. Oh yeah. Like it is hard, and it is not the same rigorous, applications that you're going through and you're looking at. I mean, oh my God, you showed up to our interview and you actually showed up on day one on time. Like, let's go. Like that's literally like kind of how we are with some of our employees, where we're like, we're just pumped you showed up. Like, and that's pretty sad. Like it's actually scary. It's sad.
Well, that's had Charlie Leonelli here, who we were talking about leadership and working up in roles and how you can get people to promote up and stuff. And at the end, I was like expecting some like really thoughtful response. I was like, what is the thing that someone can do to like really move up in their organization or just progress themselves? Like, well, just by attrition, basically, if you just show up, you're going to progress up,
right?
If you just show up and do the work even adequately. He's like, I'm not even saying you have to be the greatest in the world.
Oh yeah.
You do your job adequately where people are satisfied.
Yeah.
In this day and age, people are moving. They'll go to different companies. They quit this and that. You'll rise up to the top just by happenstance.
Yeah.
So, which is a little sad, but also it's kind of, for someone out there that, it's totally doable to be in a great position. If, and it doesn't have to be that hard, so that's kind of a nice thing to hear where it's like, you don't have to be working 16 hours a day, sleeping under your desk, like you hear at these like New York attorney, it's like, hey, no, you can work a normal job and do good at what you're doing and have a progression professionally.
It is scary. A half-assed job is adequate now. Like, you're just like, good
the
job, man. You did it.
That level's maybe dropping.
Yeah. So, but and that, who knows, that can change.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, look at it, not to get deep into this, but like look at education and look at all these things, even in our town, that are failing. Like, they've got to be revamped. It's not 1970s anymore. It's not 1980s. It's 2024. We just came out of a crazy, COVID situation where essentially we were all shut down, right? For, I'd say, even over a year, where we were actually shut down, not doing a whole lot. Now, granted, sani-can was because, we are a necessity, and until science changes how people, go to the restroom, we're a service that's still going to be around, knock on wood. But yeah, I mean, just everybody's schedules are changing. People understood like, hey, I can work from home and I can go to the grocery store at a adequate time at like 11 o'clock and not, be in this crazy rush at 6 o'clock when everybody's there. And I get more family time with my kids, which is super important. Right. Or I get to go golf here and do this, and I'm still getting the job done. And so it is a different nature now. Yes, companies still need employees to be there from, the 8 to 5 or the 8 to 4 or 9 to 5, whatever, we're providing overtime as well if we've got busy days. That's still a thing. So, you got to find that niche. But at the same time, like, okay, let's say my employee has got a medical appointment, or their kid does. We're going to let them go do that thing. Like, we're not going to be like, nope, it's got to be at 6 o'clock afterwards. Like, we're still like, hey, yeah, you're a human being, man. Like, oh, you need to leave early because of this? Go for it. Yeah. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll get it done. Now, can everybody do it? No, you can't take advantage of that system. But like, you still got to be open-minded and let people, like, we all have lives. And
I think employers, we're finding that better. Because I've heard some really wacky stuff, which maybe would work in a certain scenario. I remember, I don't know if you ever listen to Motley Fool. They're like investing, and it doesn't matter.
Oh, once in a while I have.
But years ago, it's probably been like 10, 15 years ago, they instituted like unlimited vacation leave.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, it worked because the whole impetus was like, hey, you get your job done, and we have backups for everybody. So if you have a sick day even, we're not all scrambling and stuff. So we know that the company's going to work and it's not dependent on one person in particular. But yeah, you can take as much leave as you want. But it was very much a community mindset of, hey, your coworkers are picking up your slack when you're gone. Yeah. So there was, it seemed like, again, I would love to like delve deeper into it, like a lot of interreliance on each other where they're like, hey, we're willing to do this. Whatever, you go away for 10 days, but you're going to be gone for 3 months. It's like, maybe we don't really need you here anyways. We're not missing you kind of thing. Yeah. So, but anyways, that's kind of maybe a positive side, but there's a lot of things like that would be crazy to hear, especially even like 30 years ago. But the, manufacturing style working where, you stand in one spot or, do the same thing day after day is really shifting. And I think that's a positive thing. Yeah. I'm not all about like, making things easier and bending the will to everybody. I'm not saying that. Yep. But there's better ways that we can work as humans that we're happier and you get more done. It's like, why shouldn't we be pushing for those improvements?
Totally. Absolutely.
So, Cool, man. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah, Blake, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Alrighty. Well, I'm sure we'll have you back for something. I don't know what, but
sounds good. Yeah,
you got
just
a
give me a
big
shout.
sani-can event. I'm sure we'll get something figured out.
I think the next hoodoo I think we got coming up here, September 7th, 6th, I think it's Curtis Cousin concert.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see all of our restrooms there.
Well, that's why people are going. That's why the concert.
They're not going. No, they're going brand new restrooms. We're going to unveil them, hand wash sinks. Yep. So
things are awesome, man.
Yeah. No.
All right, cool. Thanks for having.
Hey,
thanks for coming on. Sorry.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's great talking with you.
Yeah. See you, man.
Bye.
Hey there. Thank you so much for listening. If you want more content from AK Blake, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, all under the handles AK Blake. Or if you want to listen to more podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, it's there, Fairbanks year-round. You may or may not know, I am a local real estate agent here in Fairbanks with the Summit Realty Group. So if you like what I'm doing and you want to move to the area, you already live in the area, or you're looking to invest further into real estate in the area, you can reach me. Probably the best will be either my website, akblake.com, my email, blake@akblake.com, or my phone number is probably the fastest, 907-651-8356. You can call or text. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.